Welcome back. You're not watching the political segment on the Weekend Show. But before we delve into politics, I want to give a huge shout out to Chef Modern. I actually tried the meal which he made and it was absolutely brilliant. And also thanks to our artists, Favor and Seth. I really loved that performance. Straight to the tea of today, with less than 26 days to the deadline given by Independent National Electoral Commission on conducting political party primaries. There has been mounting pressures from the two political parties, major parties, APC and PDP, on INEC to extend the date. The Electoral Commission has stated clearly that they will not be extending the deadline on the dates for political primaries. On this episode, we'll be discussing the political primaries, the stories around the intricacies and the future of Nigerian elections. And joining me, I have with me in the studio Kola Olapini. He's an international human rights lawyer. Welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Mohammed Saidu Etsu. He's a former APC national chairmanship aspirant. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start with you and my favorite question this season. What's your take on the cost of nomination and expression of interest forms by the APC? I know you wanted to become the national chairman. At 100 million naira per ticket in a country where minimum wage is pegged at 30,000 naira, high rates of unemployment and inflation. What's your take on the current cost of forms?
I think we should be realistic to ourselves and the country entirely, and looking at the current economic situations and people who wants to aspire for various positions in this country, mostly in our party. The current nomination forms have scared a lot of people away to even participate in the process because of the high cost of the nomination forms, who I think has disfranchised some people who think they can serve this country and give the country a better direction in the next few years of democracy. But that notwithstanding, people who are really ready for it have purchased, and we want to see how the party and the new National Working Committee works around it to make sure that the party primaries were successful and hitch-free without much issues. Because no one can dole out 100 million naira and see that things are turned upside down and look at it and laughing and go back home and think it's okay.
But why is meant to scare the unserious people and show a level of seriousness? 100 million naira. We have some people who have bought tickets to run, and we want to believe that even they themselves, they know they may not get the tickets. However, is this because it cements their position within the party? And if you had won the ticket to be the national chairman of the APC, would you have pegged it at this price?
That's what I said at the first answer. I told you that we have to look at the current economic realities and look at people who want to participate and move the party forward. If I am opportune to lead this party, I have to put some XYZ together and make sure that we do what is needful. But what the current National Working Committee came up with, thinking that they would scare some unserious candidates away, but you can see people are still coming out.
Exactly.
You don't undermine people in politics. Don't undermine even unserious people, because people can take you by surprise. A lot of people are coming up. Nobody thinks that they are coming out to contest, and they are even bringing out their 100 million to contest. It does tell you that the democracy now and the party politics is charging. And
let's hear from Kola. Just yesterday, we've learned that the CBN governor, Emefiele, has indicated interest to run for presidency under the APC, and a form has been picked up. This is what was reported as of yesterday. And being a lawyer, what are the implications of having a sitting CBN governor who has the key to the national vaults, basically coming to run for president?
Well, I think it's obvious that Nigeria is a country of absurdities, okay, where we major in comedy, and that is obvious. The CBN governor is supposed to be apolitical. He's not supposed to have any interest in any political party. And this confirms what everybody had been saying, that this is the most biased CBN governor we've ever had. He behaved as if he was banker to the APC government. He is supposed to guard the treasury. He's not supposed to be a member of any political party. And even if he was going to throw his cap into the ring, the reasonable thing for him to have done was to wait for his tenure to have elapsed before showing his political colors. He's tantamount. What he has just done is like the INEC chairman throwing his cap into the ring to say he wants to run for elections. It's absurd. And anyway, Section 84, it's also, making a mockery of Section 84. He hasn't resigned his position. And there are so many people who haven't resigned their positions as well. That is debatable, though, because to be fair to them, their defense is it's constitutional. The Constitution says they can only resign, I think, 30 days or 3 months before. So it will be interesting to see how the Apex Court, the Supremes, how they deal with that. But I think it's sad. It's a very sad place we found ourselves, where every Tom, Dick and Harry sees the presidency as a plaything. You would never find the central bank, the Bank of England's governor, come out and say it's almost an abomination.
Talking about Section 84, the amended Electoral Act states clearly that people in certain positions, public servants and political appointees, must resign.
That's what
if they want to vote as delegates or be voted for, which the AGF, who is running for governor of Kebbi State, has taken this to court, and the court in Umar here has ruled striking that it's unconstitutional. And so the National Assembly has gone to court stating that this is wrong. We've seen people win elections, and we've heard Nigerians now say that elections are now won in the courts. So if people get to win their primaries based on the current status quo, while the matter is still in court, if the Apex Court should overturn this, does this mean legally that they could lose their seat and would have a conundrum in the political space as a result of this back and forth with the Attorney General?
It doesn't mean they could lose their seat. It means they will lose their seat. It's a command. I think it's unfortunate where we have an Attorney General of the Federation that's behaving like the Attorney General of the APC. Okay, he was caught on camera where he was declaring his political ambition in Hausa language. Literally, his hands were caught being dipped into the till. And then they came out with a robust rebuttal, saying, oh, he's not going to contest. That wasn't what he was saying, as if some of us don't understand Hausa, even if we don't speak it so fluently. And then for this same Attorney General to rush to the courts, and essentially he sued himself. That's what, so that the court can give a pronouncement. He rushed to the courts through proxies, and then the courts gave an answer, and then he says, I'm going to obey that. How come he hasn't obeyed the court's judgments on Nnamdi Kanu and Showore and a whole lot of others who have gotten court judgments against the government? He wouldn't. He is only obeying a court's judgment that favors his political ambition. And it's painful that we've wasted 8 years. I know the APC government probably will point to railways and this and that. It was started by the government before it anyway, even though we all agree that government is a continuum. Almost everything that the APC government has done in the last 8 years it's in shambles. They did the social infrastructure program, trader money, this and that. COVID-19 pandemic, they were hiding the palliatives. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Shadia, she kept on saying, I gave them the money, I did this. Eventually, it was proven true that this woman actually did share some money or share some palliatives. Some people hoarded it. Name it. This is not the change that people wanted. And we're going away with, and a feeling that Nigeria's just been in interregnum for 8 years. It's a vacuum, and one becomes disillusioned with the country.
Okay, let's hear say on this. So we have the Minister of Transportation, who has indicated interest to run, the Minister of Labour and Productivity, and the Minister of State for Education, both under the APC, have indicated interest to run for president, while Nigerian universities have been on strike. I read last week that the National Association of Nigerian Students are threatening not to let primaries hold if the ASU strike isn't called off. You have the Minister of Labour and Productivity running when unemployment rates are still high. Within the party, do you think the candidates are being held responsible and accountable? Yes, it's their right to run, but based on such performances and what we see right now with unemployment, with ASU strikes, do you feel they should even be allowed to run under a responsible party?
I think it's their constitutional right to run for an election, and it's their duty to do what is needful in government. People shouldn't attach it to their own constitutional right, thinking that because ASU is on strike and the issue unemployment rates should stop them from participating. But it's now left for the delegates of the party or the party itself to give them a standard bearer to participate in the general election. It's now left for us to see how we can be able to use them and win elections. You understand? But saying that because they are heading a ministry who is on strike, or the ministry has an issue stopping an individual to participate in an election, I think we are stopping them. We are stopping their fundamental human rights to participate in the democratic process. And let's get it clear. What is said about APC is trying to condemn everything that the party have done in the last 8 years, which is not true. The party, look at the issue of agriculture. We've gotten the first time in history that we have a lot of rice pyramids flowing around the country. We've gotten the first time in history that we have infrastructures going on in the southeast, especially Second Niger Bridge. We have the first time in history that you see a lot of roads constructions are going on. You shouldn't condemn it totally that APC have not done anything. And I think we should look at areas that we've not done enough to improve on it. But kicking against everything that we've done in these 8 years, I think is not being fair to the party.
So let me ask you. President Muhammadu Buhari ran under 3 pillars. One was the economy, 2 insecurity, and 3 corruption. We've seen a sitting SGF removed and being prosecuted for corruption. We've seen the EFCC chairman, who the Senate had rejected to approve at least twice, being removed for corruption. You now see the Abuja-Kaduna Rail, just close to Abuja here, being attacked, and that's security. And then within this administration, Nigeria was termed the poverty capital. Do you think the government has actually fulfilled its promises to the people, besides agriculture and infrastructure, which you've said, they're core promises?
No government can fulfill 100% of its promises, but you actually done a lot to make sure that things are right. And what you're saying about issue of corruption, the SGF is fired, and the former EFCC boss is no longer on the seat because of finding 1 or 2 things. We are fighting a lot of things in this country underneath, but people will not look at it on that level because people want to see you chained. Immediately you see somebody is tagged as corrupt, you want him to be chained or killed. You know, there's processes to do all these things. And the government is a democracy government. We're not a military that you can just see and prosecute people like that. Secondly, issue of insecurity. You can look at the Northeast, that we inherit a lot of insecurity. Some local government are not even in existence. The insecurity thing have shifted to the Northwest and the North Central. Especially even my states, there are some local government that are under terrorists. You understand? But the government is doing everything possible to make sure that we tame it. And you look at what happened in that Kaduna train. Now the government is trying to see how we can be able to put the train back and see how they can fight it. Because insecurity in this country that we're seeing has so many dimensions. We have economic issue to it. We have cultural, and we have so many dimensions to it. But the government is trying its best to see how we can put everything in order.
Okay, we'll come back to that, and I know Kola has some feedback, but we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we return, more on the political segment of the weekend show.
Red and black. Just a moment. The refrigerator. Hello? Sunday! Sunday!
Yes, my guy.
Come. 1,000 naira. Buy me Airtel recharge card. You heard what I said? 1,000 naira. Okay. The rechargeable of this are no problem. We have it. What?
My guy.
Thank you. Hey! Sunday don't finish me. I say 1,000 naira recharge card. You carry 8,000 naira of my money. Go load them. Because money there your hand, Abi.
Oga, no. As I load the 1,000 naira, I use Airtel Ovajara, turn them to 8,000 naira, just like that.
Ta! Onye Ovajara.
Get 8 times the value of any recharge, plus double data and 1,000 naira activation bonus when you buy a new SIM.
Sunday, go buy us. And make sure say they put Ovajara for you.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Welcome back. You're still watching the political segment on the weekend show, and today we're talking about the 2023 elections, primaries, and the political parties as they try to meet up with the timeline for conducting political primaries. Just before we left, he spoke about how you can't just take away all that the APC has done in the last 7 years because of some flaws, and I see you have some.
I'm going to just respond to 3. I'm going to use an example of security. It now has come into the public domain that the government actually got security reports that the train was going to be attacked. And you must realize that twice that train had been attacked before. It's commonsensical. It was just a matter of time. Let's say the bandits were so ignorant and illiterate and they were just shooting at bulletproof trains. Any students of science would know that the easiest way to hit the train was just to blow up the tracks. You don't even have to attack the train. You just, or remove some of the tracks, remove it for maybe like 500 meters. And once the train gets to where the tracks are, it's going to fall off because there's nothing to ride on anymore. I don't understand why a government led by a retired general would have security reports and nothing was done. It's not excusable. We can't speak like this if we want to progress. He talked about rice pyramids. What does that translate to the ordinary man on the streets? Why did we stop importation of rice if we're going to be starving? Is it not better for us to be importing rice and be buying sacks at 7,500 and 8,000 than to shut our borders and say we want to have homegrown rice and rice is now 38 or 40,000 naira? Where is the economic sense in that? And how does that translate into purposeful government to the ordinary man on the street? I won't be surprised if another government comes in and overrules this rice, homegrown, whatever. Maybe it will have been sensible to have a hybrid solution and say, okay, let this rice be coming in whilst we're planting ours and, gradually reduce it or skim it off. You can see what's happening with in Europe now with the war in Ukraine. Russia supplies a huge amount of gas to Europe. And the European Union know that they cannot cut off their nose to spite off their face. And they said, okay, well, we know that what Russia is doing is wrong. We want to hit them with economic sabotage, but we're going to be in crisis if we cut off completely without using Russian oil or Russian gas. So what we'll do is we'll do it in a phased way in 6 months. That's how sensible people reason. Well, people like themselves.
Okay, let me bring it back to the topic at hand. Political primaries. There's been a lot of conversation around zoning. What are your thoughts on zoning?
I think
for the presidency.
Yeah, I think the zoning thing started from 1999 with the PDP government, who thinks that they know how to. In fact, word zoning started from PDP, but what we know about is power sharing, how we can be able to share power among zones, among the geopolitical zones we have in the country. But now that we are in another phase of democracy, where zoning has hit up both in the opposition and the ruling government, I think the issue of zoning shouldn't arise now. We should talk about competence. Who is going to lead this country to the proper directions? We should talk about the president that will give us food on the table. We should talk about president that will continue on the infrastructural development. We should talk about the president that will give us security and protect lives and property of Nigerians.
Do you think every state is capable of producing at least one person who can be the president of Nigeria?
We have over 200 million population in this country.
So yes, every state is
Every
capable.
state has capable hands to lead this country.
However, a certain region has a higher population and could potentially sway the numbers. And if we go by selecting the right people who are capable while the numbers speak differently, don't you think it is only fair for some power sharing or rotation of sorts to be done?
That's what I'm saying, that you can negotiate. That's allowed us to do. But now look at it in fairness. In 2014, that we're on our primaries, in APC primaries, we have about 6 aspirants, where we have even the current former governor of Imo State was in the race. Nobody stopped him. You understand? But at the end of the day, they've agreed to elect President Muhammadu Buhari in that primaries, and he emerged victorious. Even now, a lot of people are coming into the race from north, even from the southwest and southeast. We are even seeing some area of candidate coming from the north. Let's go to the ballot and see how it goes. But in fairness, it's time for us to think of another region to also produce president. But if you look at the political angle to it and interest, anybody can be in the ring.
I must say I commend the APC for their moves towards zoning of sorts. They have actually been more proactive with most of their candidates from the southern region of Nigeria. So, Kola, what's your take on zoning, especially saying the brouhaha within the PDP where they started this zoning conversation, but all of a sudden with the Intrigues cases, they realize, some of them realize that you have to put out a northern candidate who would win a southern candidate if the APC does that, and so it's changing the dynamics. But what's your take on it generally?
Well, it goes to the very foundation of Nigeria. Nigeria is basically 2 countries, northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria. It was the British who merged it together for economic interests, not even political. And it is what it is. That's the line that we've told since the early 1900s. We will have a Rwandese situation where you have the majority who now there was an uprising against the minority Tutsi government. And it was because of equity, fairness, and injustice, or justice, depending on how you want to see it, that we've come about with what we have today. If we have a country that was just and equitable, and you grew up here, basically, in your latter years in Abuja, and you can run to be senator here without anybody saying, go back to your home state, where are you from? You have Igbo people who grew up in Kano and they can't contest. You have, Hausa people growing up in Obalinde in Lagos and they can't contest to be governor of Lagos or, going for the... Lagos is even trying. We have quite a number of southeastern people origin in enclaves like Festa, Kamuhu and all that. If it was a country of justice, fairness, equity, nobody will be talking about this. But where you have a certain region who have been in power and seem to know how to manipulate themselves in continuum, then we're going to have an issue. And that's the reason why we cannot say or enshrine in our constitution the principle of federal character. Okay? A candidate from a certain region is not brilliant enough, scores 2 in common entrance and goes to King's College or Queen's College, and then somebody scores 150 and cannot get in because of federal character. 2, the cutoff for Yobe State is 2 for females to go to Queen's College, and a child that comes from Delta or wherever is going to struggle with 145 for the same seat. Isn't that what gave rise to zoning, so that there's equity, there's a sense of belonging there? okay, there's no way, in my own view, that Nigeria will survive. Nigeria's, what we know now, will survive if a certain region says, oh, well, it is now turn for merit. When it was their turn, it wasn't turn for merit. General Buhari is not the most brilliant president we've had. He didn't get there on merit. He got there on sentiments. If we are going to talk of merit in the North, I don't think with the performance of what we've seen with General Buhari, he can be president.
But politics is largely about sentiments, which is why the absence of ideology right now is quite baffling. But because we recall President Muhammadu Buhari didn't really get it on the platter. He had run up at least 4 times before now. So if it was just that element, it would have been different. However, we do see a decay in the zoning system, and I like your argument. If we believed in equity and unity, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because people vote based on candidates. But there's a bigger problem now, which is what is called consensus candidates. The APC, the PDP, the APC wants to remain in power, the PDP wants to take power back from the APC by any means. And while you speak about competent candidates, we're at the risk of seeing some very competent candidates lose out because the party is going to pick a candidate that favors its interests. Do you feel that direct or indirect primaries should be allowed so that the party can choose its flag bearer, or do you feel it's better for a consensus candidate, especially seeing what happened to the likes of yourself with the APC convention?
Let me give you back to the party constitution and what the party said about choosing candidates. We have 3 options, which are direct, indirect, and consensus, which is the last option. You understand? Now, the party has not come out categorically and tells the aspirants that this is where they are going. You can see yesterday that they roll out delegate forms, how to participate in choosing the candidate for the party. Nobody said, no, we're not going to have delegate. We're going to just choose and write names and agreed on who X, Y, Z. No. They are going, because you must write. You must willingly write that you are accepted to withdraw for Mr. A or Mr. B. That's what the consensus said, and that's what the INEC rule says, and the new Electoral Act said. Now, anybody says that consensus is what the party is going to agree on, I don't think it's right at this critical time. We should allow people to participate so that the democracy will have the vibe that we think it should be. We should allow competent hands to come out, roll out your manifesto, tell the delegates or electorates that this is what you have to offer. But when you tailored your election towards consensus, a lot of people will be skimmed out and people will feel discouraged about the process. And that's why I think the party knows what to do, and I don't think they are going towards consensus entirely.
So let's hope so, because it's not rumored that with the APC convention, the president had his favorites who the party agreed on. And interestingly, it was on social media last week that there's a withdrawal of interest form, which interested people are meant to sign while submitting their forms. Now, the APC has come to refute it, saying it's just part of the process. But they aren't forced. But we know how it works in politics. But let's hear your take on zoning color.
I think on consensus, you meant.
On consensus, sorry.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the party is going to, bless you. It will be interesting to see how the party is going to come up with a consensus candidate, because consensus. Okay. Do you want some water?
No,
okay, fine. It will be interesting. I think I should. I think that's about all I can say. However, the bigger picture is this, and this is where the masses, the voting people, should know where their power lies. The way the British designed Nigeria, if we go back to the original 3 regions. No one region can produce the leader of this country.
Absolutely.
And that is why General Buhari tried up the 4th time before he was. People keep talking, oh, he has 12 million from the core north, 12 million votes assured. So whoever he brings as consensus candidate already inherits 12 million. It's a lie. His 12 million never got him anywhere. You need a geographical spread and 2/3 majority, don't you? And until Bola Tinubu and his cohorts came together and said, this was after the president had cried, the general had cried and said he was not going anymore, and said, okay, cry baby, stop crying. We can actually forge a way out over here. You are not shaking your hands across the Niger, and you're not, getting the required votes. And that was the game changer. That was what gave him the presidency. It will be interesting if the consensus candidate will be able to swing either of the other 2 regions. When I say 2 regions, the original 3 regions which the British set up. Nobody can become the president without the help of one region. Okay, so whether one of those 2 regions who may not be the ones that produce the presidential candidate, now swing whichever way would be what would decide. It's not a given that even the consensus candidate is going to win. I agree with him when he's talking about merit, but that's ideological. That's the ideal thing. But we know we've thrown merits to the dustbins in our country. Okay, so I think more than ever, zoning would be. I don't see with the present crops of the array of politicians coming up with their own personal ambition. It will be a psychological experiment, sociological or political experiment to see how a party is going to force all of them to step down and adopt one person. But it will be interesting to find out what the carrot.
It's good to see that you both agree on something, which is on competence, which is about having the right candidate. However, we have the next 1 month to see and find out what it will take. A lot of old names are in the race, and it makes one wonder if the old people are bringing in any new ideas. We wish there was entrance for newer people who could come and show the value which they add.
There is the not too young to run bill, and then they slammed them with 100 million naira to go and buy the form.
And that's the conversation we have also had. But we will continue to have such conversations, and we will continue to get Nigerians involved in how they are governed and by who. It's time to ask the right questions. It's time to hold these people accountable, because once they get in, it's another 4 years. My name is Andy Madaka, and that's all we can have on the Weekend Show today. Follow us on social media at Weekend Show NG on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Andy Madaka. Send comments, questions, and what you would like to say on this show. But for now, do have a blessed week, and we'll see you next week.